All right, Odell Beckham Jr. had some interesting comments to the Wall Street Journal that surfaced yesterday. The item was published yesterday. The comments were a couple of weeks old. We'll get to that in a second. Here's what Odell Beckham Jr. said in comments that were published for the first time yesterday. With everything that's going on, it doesn't make sense that we're trying to do this. I can understand basketball was already in the playoffs. 5-on-5 basketball in an arena is going to be more intense than regular season games. Hooping is different than playing an 11-on-11 contact sport where there's 80 people in a locker room. We're not ready for football season. So why are we trying to push forward? It's obviously for their money, they being the owners. And that bothers me because there's always been this, and I hate saying it like that, but the owner's attitude is, oh, we own you guys. And just kind of that unfairness going on that they don't see us as human. I just feel like the season shouldn't happen, and I'm prepared for it to not happen, and I wouldn't mind not having it. Now, Browns fans spent a lot of yesterday shouting down this idea that these comments are 2 weeks old and that, according to Mary Kay Cabot, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Odell Beckham Jr. has no plans to opt out. Because when you read this, it feels like he's getting ready to opt out, that he's thinking about opting out. Well, he's come to the facility. He feels secure. He's not opting out. It still doesn't change what he said. He said what he said, and he knew it was going to be published. And I don't like making these excuses for the words that come out of a grown man's mouth. If he wanted to get ahead of it and issue a statement saying, you know what, now that I'm here at camp, I just need everyone to know. I made some comments to the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks ago. They're going to be published soon. I don't believe them anymore. I feel differently now. Forget what I said that you're going to see soon. He never did that. Right? If you're going to rectify, if you're going to retract, if you're going to change what you said in an on-the-record interview, you change it yourself. And until you do, these are your words. So these Browns fans are like, oh, it doesn't matter anymore. It matters. This is what he said, Chris, and it's impactful. And even if he doesn't opt out, this is what he believes. And this is what he believed 2 weeks ago. And until he tells me otherwise, I'm going to believe it's what he believes now.
Well, he doesn't have to tell you. He's there. He's doing it. So, he's not worried about having to tell you. And
but there's a difference. There's a difference
but 2 weeks ago, we were even going, where the hell's it going on in the NFL season? And oh my gosh, how dare he have to be honest and tell the truth? You just wanted extra time for the players to be able to opt out because you wanted to do it. So now you're going to be insensitive about a guy who just wants to say this?
Sorry to insult your best friend.
No, I'm not. I just don't.
My point is this.
What?
My point is this. He said what he said. Until he says something differently, these are his words. These are his on-the-record words. And I don't like this idea that, well, per sources, Odell Beckham Jr. has no plans to opt out. Put him at a podium. Put him at a Zoom conference call. Let's hear from him then if he's got anything to say different than what he said 2 weeks ago. This is just a dynamic, and it's not specific to Odell Beckham Jr. People say things on the record, and then they spark a reaction, and then there's this scramble to make it something other than what it was. He said what he said. He's rooting for the season to not happen. And I think it's ironic that he's the one who's rooting for the season to not happen when we're the ones who have been fending off all these hot takes and accusations that simply by raising the concerns inherent to pro football in a pandemic, we're the ones who are rooting for the season to not happen. No, we want the season to happen. Odell Beckham Jr., as of 2 weeks ago, was secretly hoping that they don't, well, not so secretly hoping they don't have a season.
Well, I mean,
it's what he said.
Okay, he had trepidation. He wasn't sure where it was going to go. I mean, I don't think that's totally crazy. I think there's a lot of players. Hopefully they make him available. Well, they will, of course. No, they're going to hide him for the whole year, and he'll never hear from him again. I mean,
I'm not saying the whole year. I'm saying now that these words are out there, he needs to address whether he feels differently or not. Maybe he feels differently. I want to know.
Well, I mean, obviously he feels differently. He's there. He's playing. I mean, what do you know that?
He feels differently.
Well, okay. If he felt so differently, Mike, he would have left already, and he'd be gone. He's obviously saw what he liked, and he's moving forward.
Not for what he's making. That's the thing. If he was making $1 million this year, maybe he'd opt out. But he's in year 3 of a big money contract, and maybe he's hoping to get another contract. Maybe he's one of these guys whose agents, again, I've heard no specific names. I've just been made aware of the dynamic that some agents are trying to use the possibility of an opt-out to get better deals for their players. And we know that Odell Beckham Jr., from the moment he was traded to the Browns in 2019, was agitating.
We barely heard that. It was a rumor. But it's all we heard. You're connecting crap here. You're connecting crap.
Antonio Brown, we need to be on the lookout for everything. I just want to know how he feels and whether he still believes this. And regardless of what he raises a good point. The attitude of ownership Look, I don't disagree with him on the substance of what he said.
Yeah, right.
When he says the attitude is just shut up and play, we own you, right? They wanted these guys to play preseason games.
Yeah, that's right.
The NFLPA had to fight and scratch and claw to get the NFL to back off on putting these guys into potentially harm's way from the virus standpoint for 2 preseason games. And kudos to the NFLPA for doing it. But I want to know how he feels. I want him to revisit these comments, and I think it's relevant.
I get that.
But my point, my objection isn't to him. It's to the idea that Browns fans are going to rally around quotes from unnamed sources that try to change what he said. He said what he said, and if anybody is going to change what he said, he's the one to do it. That's my point.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I do. And, listen, you're right. He's a superstar. He made these comments. We want to hear him, rectify it and where's he at now mentally? Yeah, you're Odell Beckham Jr. Listen, am I sitting here going like, oh, I understand why people make a big deal about it. He's one of the biggest stars in the game. He, to his fault, is too honest. He's probably better off just keeping those private thoughts to himself and not saying that, because now, you get into this situation, and of course, that's what everybody's going to be banging the drum about anytime any media members, trying to get in contact with the Cleveland Browns, like you said, because they want to hear now. What made you comfortable? Why were you thinking that? All those things. I get it. I totally do. All I was trying to say is I think it's a pretty normal thought. I do. And again, his biggest issue sometimes is he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's too honest. And then it causes issues like this right now. You're right. So now here we are talking about it, and we do want to hear from him. But nonetheless, I think his actions are saying he's somewhat comfortable or happy with where he is. And if not, we're going to find out by Thursday, and he'll probably opt out if that's not the case. But, I'm not mad at the thoughts or anything like that. I understand your frustration and what you're saying about the Cleveland fans and the comments and all about all that.
I mean, they act like he said it 10 years ago.
Yeah, right. It's recent.
Ago,
right.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't all get reset and rolled up in a ball and thrown away simply because he was at the facility and has been at the facility. That isn't a hard reset on the sentiments that he expressed 2 weeks ago. And, Chris, on your point that he does tend to be a little too candid, a little too honest, a little too relaxed in these situations, he's going to be 28 2 months from tomorrow.
Right.
He's a grown man.
Yeah.
At some point, he needs to realize I either need to pass on these if I can't trust myself to not be too comfortable and too candid, or he needs to self-edit himself a little bit better. I mean, I don't know how many times you have to clean up a mess after something that you said gets magnified and it gets questioned. And again, I'm not criticizing what he said.
Yeah.
What he said is fine. What drove me crazy yesterday is all these Browns fans trying to disown words that came out of his mouth 2 weeks ago. But at some point, you need to understand the connection between what you say and how they'll react. And he's going to be 28. And just don't do these. Just pass. Just decline. What do you need to talk to the Wall Street Journal for anyway, Odell Beckham Jr.? It's just strange.
Or self-edit
that becomes something I'm not going to talk to ESPN. I'm not going to talk to CBS. I'm not going to talk to NBC. But hey, Wall Street Journal, come on in. I don't get it. But the point is, he said what he said. And I look forward to hearing more from him now that he's there.
Yeah.
And now that these words can be posed to him by somebody from the Cleveland media, and they can be asked specific questions about whether he feels any differently now that he's actually there.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.